is Uraschima and the Turtle. There was once a worthy old couple who lived on the coast and supported themselves by fishing. They had only one child, a son, who was their pride and joy, and for his sake they were ready to work hard all day long and never felt tired or discontented with their lot. The son's name was Uraschima Taro, which means in Japanese, son of the island. And he is a fine, well-grown youth and a good fisherman, minding neither wind nor weather. Not the bravest sailor in the whole village, dared venture so far out to sea as Uraschimataro, Uraschimataro. And many times the neighbors used to shake their heads and say to his parents, "If your son goes on being so rash, one day he will try his luck once too often, and the waves will end up by swallowing him." But Uraschimataro paid no heed to these remarks, and he was really very clever in managing a boat. The old people were very seldom anxious about him. One bright, beautiful morning, as he was hauling his well-filled nets into the boat, he saw lying among the fishes a tiny little turtle. He was delighted with his prize and threw it into a wooden vessel to keep it till he got home, when suddenly the turtle found its voice, and tremblingly begged for its life. "After all," it said, "what good can I do you? I am so small and young, and would gladly live a little longer. Be merciful and set me free, and I shall know how to prove my gratitude." Now, Uraschimataro was very good-natured, and besides, he could never bear to say no, so he picked up the turtle and put it back gently into the sea. Years flew by, and every morning Uraschimataro sailed his boat into the deep sea. But one day he was making for a little bay between some rocks, when arose a fierce whirlwind, which shattered his boat to pieces, and she was sucked under the waves. Uraschimataro himself nearly shared the same fate, but he was a powerful swimmer and struggled hard to reach the shore. Then he saw a large turtle coming towards him, and above the howling of the storm he heard what it said. "I am the turtle whose life you once saved. I will now pay my debt and show my gratitude. The land is still far distant, and without my help you would never get there. Climb on my back, and I will take you where you will." Uraschimataro did not wait to be asked twice, and thankfully accepted his friend's help. But scarcely was he seated firmly on the shell when the turtle proposed that they should not return to shore at once, but go under the sea and look at some of the wonders that lay hidden there. Uraschimataro agreed willingly, and in another moment they were deep, deep down, with fathoms of blue water above their heads. Oh, how quickly they darted through the still, warm sea. The young man held tight and marveled where they were going and how long they were to travel, but for 3 days they rushed on, till at last the turtle stopped before a splendid palace, shining with gold and silver, crystal and precious stones, and decked here and there with branches of pale pink coral and glittering pearls. But if Uraschimataro was astonished by the beauty of the outside, he was dumbstruck at the sight of the hall within, which was lighted by the blaze of fish scales. "Where have you brought me?" he asked the guide in a low voice. "To the palace of Ringu, the house of the sea god, whose subjects we all are," answered the turtle. "I am the first waiting maid of his daughter, the lovely Princess Ahime, whom you shall shortly see." Uraschimataro was so puzzled with the adventures that had befallen him that he waited in a dazed condition for what would happen next. But the turtle, who had talked so much of him to the princess that she had expressed a wish to see him, went at once to make him known an arrival, and directly the princess beheld him her heart was set on him. and she begged him to stay with her, and to return promised that he should never grow old, neither should his beauty fade.
Is that not reward enough?
She asked, smiling, looking at the fair as the sun itself. And Uraschimataro said, "Oh, yes." And he stayed there. For how long? Only he knew later. His life passed by, and each hour seemed happier than the last, when one day there rushed over him a terrible longing to see his parents. He fought against it hard, knowing how it would grieve the princess, but it grew on him stronger and stronger, till at length he became so sad that the princess inquired what was wrong. Then he told her of the longing he had to visit his old home, and that he must see his parents at once. The princess was almost frozen with horror, and implored him to stay with her, or something dreadful would be sure to happen.
"You will never come back, and we shall never see me again,"
she moaned bitterly. But Uraschimataro stood firm and repeated, "Only this once I will leave you, then I will return to your side forever." Sadly, the princess shook her head, but she answered slowly,
"One way there is to bring you safely back, but I fear you will never agree to the conditions of the bargain."
"I will do anything that will bring me back to you," exclaimed Uraschimataro, looking at her tenderly, but the princess was silent. She knew too well that when he left her, she would see his face no more. Then she took from a shelf a shiny gold box and gave it to Uraschimataro, praying him to keep it carefully, and above all things, never to open it.
"If you can do this," she said as she bade him farewell, "your friend the turtle will meet you at the shore and will carry you back to me."
Uraschimataro thanked her from his heart and swore solemnly to do her bidding. He hid the box safely in his garments, seated himself on the back of the turtle, and vanished into the ocean path, waving his hands to the princess. 3 days and 3 nights they swam through the sea, and at length Uraschimataro arrived at the beach which lay before his old home. The turtle bade him farewell, and he was gone in a moment. Uraschimataro drew near the village with quick and joyful steps. He saw the smoke curling through the roof, and the thatch where green plants were thickly sprouted. He heard the children shouting and calling, and from the window that he passed came a twang of a koto, and everything seemed to cry a welcome for his return. Yet suddenly he felt a pang in his heart as he wandered down the street. After all, everything had changed. Neither men nor houses were those he once knew. Quickly he saw his old home. Yes, it was still there, but it had a strange look. Anxiously he knocked at the door and asked the woman who opened it after his parents, but she did not know their names and could not give him no news of them. Still more disturbed, he rushed to the burying grounds, the only place that could tell him what he wished to know. Here, at any rate, he would find out what it all meant. And he was right. In a moment he stood before the grave of his parents, and the date within the stones was exactly the same date that they had lost their son, for he had forsaken them for the daughter of the sea. And so he found that since he had left his home, 300 years had passed by. Shuddering with horror at this discovery, he turned back to the village street, and hoping to meet someone who could tell him of the days of old. But when a man spoke, he knew not that he was dreaming, though he felt as if he had lost his senses. In despair, he bethought himself of the box which was the gift of the princess. Perhaps, after all, this dreadful thing was not true. He might be the victim of some enchanter's spell, and in his hand lay the counter-charm. Almost unconsciously he opened it, and a purple vapor came pouring out. He held an empty box in his hand, and as he looked he saw the fresh hand of youth had suddenly grown shriveled, like the hand of an old man. He ran to the brook, which flowed clear stream down the mountain, and saw himself reflected as in a mirror. It was the face of a mummy which looked back at him. Old, wounded to death, he crept back to the village. No man knew the old man to be the strong, handsome youth who had run down to the street an hour before. So he toiled wearily back till he reached the shore, and he sat sadly on a rock and called loudly to the turtle. But she never came back any more, but instead death came soon and set him free. But before that happened, the people who saw him sitting lonely on the shore had heard his story, and when their children were restless, they used to tell them of a good son from whom love his parents had given up for their sakes the splendor and wonders of the palace of the sea, and the most beautiful woman in the world besides.